Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Travel Talk with Indira. We are here with the lovely Jennifer Ortiz. And Jennifer is a counselor, a domestic violence counselor. She helps with human trafficking. She's an Airbnb host and she's a travel agent. She wears many, many hats.
Yes.
It's a pleasure to have you with us, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, Indira. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your podcast.
Jennifer, before we get started, tell everyone a little about you and give us an overview on what human trafficking is and how it intersects with the travel industry.
My name is Jennifer. I've been a counselor, trauma informed counselor for the past 9 years, working with youth and adolescents and survivors of domestic violence and trafficking. And I've been working in the anti-human trafficking industry for the past 4 years, helping survivors to lead them to freedom. And one of the major causes that I notice on cases of human trafficking is definitely how travel and human trafficking comes together, especially in hotels and Airbnbs and hospitality business. Up to 90% of human trafficking cases happens in the hospitality business. And traveling, it's one of the major also ways that traffickers lure their victims and want to find and recruit victims into trafficking, especially if they are going to solo traveling or traveling as etc. for women or groups and etc. And it comes together because especially with airports, traveling, there's a lot of exchange that happens there, traveling by plane, um, even in routes, not just planes, but also in highways. So one of the major three states of human trafficking that cases that happen in the US is in Texas, California, and New York. Those are the top three states that are the highest human trafficking cases that are happening right now. And at first, before I found out about this, I'm born and raised in New York, and I had no idea New York was actually one of the top states. And I'm like, what? How is that
I am
possible?
thinking that also, like, what?
Yes, and it
But I
is.
guess it makes sense because New York is so big, there's so many people in and out all the time.
Hmm. Yes, and also the airports. There's JFK, LaGuardia, and
Mhm.
then Newark. So it's also all that is a combination of that because there's a lot of people coming from, out of the state, newcomers that come to the state. They don't know where they at, they don't know where they're going. They're very vulnerable. So traffickers, what they look for, they are looking for very vulnerable people. It could be there's high risk. Some people that are homeless have gone through foster care. People that have gone through domestic violence relationship have a high risk of being trafficked, and vice versa. Someone has been trafficked, it's a high chance to be in domestic violence relationship, um, and also in trafficking. And at the same time, especially if someone is going through a lot of low self-esteem, low confidence, trying to find love, that's a big one, especially if you're in desiring a romantic relationship. Traffickers will smell that. They will see that because you're very vulnerable and you're just
Because
feeling
of your
lonely.
body language.
Yes, body language, and at the same time, you feeling that loneliness and you desiring that love and affection. Um, they will smell that some way, somehow. They will know because that's what they do. They recruit. So it's my mission is as a travel agent as well is to provide help women to travel in a safety way and have wisdom and just guidance through their adventure because we all want to travel, but there's so sometimes there's this fear of I don't know, I don't want to go by myself, etc. But my mission is to be able to provide the most effective way to have a safe adventure. And my Airbnb is the purpose of hosting females to provide a safe space when they travel, so that way they don't have to worry about safety or concern about what's going to happen.
Through your years doing this, you said it was 9 years. What are some common misconceptions on human trafficking?
Yes, very common that traffickers are only men. Uh, no, it could be anybody. It could be anybody. Um, it could be a woman. Like there are women that recruits victims for
Hmm.
trafficking. For traffickers and pimps, they actually um, they will have a woman to have you make you her best friend. You know, if you're longing to have friendships and you are longing to have a friend, she will become your best friend and gain your trust and try to gain your trust and build that trust. And next thing you know, it's to lure you into trafficking. So it's being mindful about that as well, that anybody can be a trafficker. Even children, not even children, but adult, like teens, students. I'm telling you, anybody. It could be even someone a victim of trafficking can be a cashier in a Walmart or Starbucks, and you don't even know because traffickers will sometimes allow their victims to work regular jobs and go to school.
Wow,
Yes.
that is interesting information.
Hmm.
So how prevalent is human trafficking in tourism and travel? And I know you said, well, when we were speaking before, that there are specific regions or travel hubs that are most vulnerable. Can you share that with our listeners?
Yes, yes. I'm also a missionary, so I love to do mission work. I've done mission work in the anti-human trafficking industry in the Philippines. Philippines is definitely a hot spot of trafficking, especially there is in the red light district women that are working, and it's very normalized to be a sex worker. And in Thailand as well, tourists will go and travel to these places to buy sex. Because when they are in these countries, there are men that will say it's a work trip, but it's to go to find a Filipina, find a Thailand woman, um, and they get very tricked. Women gets tricked there and being trafficked because it's a high poverty um, place, and in Philippines, you will need to have a college degree even to work in McDonald's. So you can just imagine the pressure of poverty, not able to afford college because they don't have the resources we do.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have financial aid. They don't have, grants. They will need to pay it out of pocket. So out of desperation, a lot of people will take advantage and offer these jobs that are not really a job. They will say it's a waitress job, and by the time they get there, it's a dancing job, and they don't have an option to leave. They will blackmail them. They will blackmail their family, their children, and then men that want to buy sex, they don't want to buy it here in the state because they will find out. Most it will
Right.
still have happened, but if they go out of the state, who's gonna find out, right? Unless
So
it's
a question, I know I'm interrupting what you're saying, but a question that came into my mind. Do men get trafficked?
yes,
Because we think about men as the traffickers, not the ones being trafficked. And how common is that?
yes, yes. Men do get trafficked because women can even be traffickers. So it is common, very common. But it's more common in women to be trafficked than men. There's a higher percentage there than men, but it does happen. And the high risk also is the population of especially the LGBTQ community. That's definitely a high risk of trafficking that is can be. So it's also being mindful. I remember in the Philippines, there's a lot of transgender men to female that are being trafficked. So that's another area to keep in mind.
You know, you're saying that, and I'm remembering this client, they went to DR. And so this guy was there, and he was talking to the waitress, and then this other guy came up and started putting himself. And, you know, we didn't think about it at that time, but afterthought was, I wonder if that was the pimp. Because you know, they carried them out of the resort and all these things. But then the next day, the guy was asking the client, you know, are you interested in her? And he was like, no. And the guy was like, well, do you like guys? So, you know, that story came up when you were saying that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so now, and I know you said before that it's very prevalent in hotels. And when we think about hotels, it being prevalent, we're not thinking the five-star hotels. But I know you were saying offline that this is where it's very prevalent also.
Yes, there is very well hotel chains right now that are being there's lawsuits against them because of um, the victim was the trafficking that happened there specifically. Like the trafficker will bring them to the hotel, would check them in, and have different men come in and
And this is
out.
within the US.
Yes, this is within the US. And I also speaking out of experience that happened to me when I first traveled internationally as well um, with hotel workers. I was about to be taken in regards to I was by myself and there were hotel workers that were trying to lure me in. So I was able to escape, thank God.
I'm so
And
sorry you had to go through that.
yeah, it was very traumatic. And especially as my first trip by myself, and it was a group that I went with that I met over there. But at the same time, that really was a very traumatic experience. So that is also happening in the state right here.
Wow.
And then and that's why I want to bring awareness among travelers so that way you can have some safety precautions about what happened if you're in the hotel room by yourself or you're checking in or what precautions or with your family and um, just so that and your children, looking out for your children. Don't leave them in the pool by themselves. You know, there's always got to be precaution because if you think about it, when you go in hotels, they don't really check in every person that walks in the lobby. If you
Right.
think about it, anybody can walk in and out, right? They don't be looking at checking in every person like, okay, do you have a room here? What's your name? What name are you under? Check it. No, anybody can walk in.
And anybody could be your guest at your room. They wouldn't check that.
Right.
But what are some of the red flags that travelers, flight attendants, hotel staff should look for when it comes to human trafficking?
Yes, great question. So, some signs is saying it's saying if let's say the victim is not saying anything and it's mostly the traffickers doing the talking. Um, if they're paying cash, instead of card. That's also another thing. Because you can't keep track when it's cash, when you pay the
Right.
room cash, instead of ID. If
You can't
the
track it to anybody.
Yes. Also for cleaners, they look at rooms more than, the outside, front desk, etc.
Mhm.
They go clean. So if there's a lot of, let's say, uh, condoms in the trash, condoms in the rooms, or that's a sign of trafficking. Red flags, if the person, the victim is younger um, and it's just also being a precaution if there's a lot of a man coming in and out in a room, that's a red flag. Um, Also, I recommend also that if you're traveling, uh, have if you can get there's like small cameras on Amazon that you can purchase that you could put it in your hotel room while you're out and about venturing, making sure you can look at the camera through your phone. Um, and then you could see if cleaners are coming in or someone else, or there's someone in there that while you're out is waiting for you to get there inside. So that that's helpful. Also using a door stopper that has an alarm. There's specific ones that are door stoppers that you can put behind the door. So that way, let's say when you're sleeping, someone tries to break into your hotel room, that sounds like an alarm.
And can
etc.
travel agents and tour operators play a role in preventing human trafficking?
Can you repeat that question? Sorry.
That's okay. How can travel agents and tour operators like yourselves and myself play a role in helping or preventing, I should say, human trafficking?
Yes. I suggest to provide a guide about safety travels to your clients. If you can do an ebook or whatever, a PDF file, just to make precautions for your clients to travel safety. Of course, we don't have control of everything, right? We cannot prevent, but we can provide resources
Right.
to be to give them wisdom on how to navigate their travels. So that could be doing the research about travel agents do the research about safe neighborhoods. What is the safest place to stay at? As well as providing resources in regards to helping them realize that, find someone that they can trust, that they can provide information of their hotel, their itinerary to someone, as well as uh, providing a way to help them realize as well that please do not post on social media on real time, and especially tagging your location in real time, like the restaurant, hotel, because traffickers are looking on social media. That's one of the ways they look for their victim is social media. Um,
Okay. And the younger generation loves that.
yes,
I am
very,
here.
very, and that's why I know I have the feeling and tendency when I travel, I want to post in my stories and post on my Instagram, Facebook, but it's out of safety. Wait until you're done with your trip or a couple of days later after that post, whatever it is, but do not post on real time. I always suggest that. And as well, don't say that if you're traveling by yourself, if people ask you, are you by yourself? Don't say that. Don't say you're solo. Say you're gonna have your friend, you're with your friend, you're waiting for a friend, or you're gonna meet with a friend later, but do not.
Actually, I do get that question a lot because I do a lot of solo travel and I do get that question. So I understand what you're saying.
Yes, because the traffickers, they be looking at that. They want to know if okay, if the person's by themselves, etc. Get information. Always trust your gut feeling.
What are some of the tactics that traffickers use to exploit the travel system? Like the traffickers get these persons on flights, they get them in hotels, they get them in cruises. What are some of the tactics that they use to exploit these systems?
Yeah, so there is different ways they can use someone else's identity, etc. They can actually use someone else's name, social security, ID. They can make fake IDs. Like it's different ways they can actually do it.
Okay. And there are so many laws and policies in place to combat human trafficking in the travel sector, but you still see people get around that. And so my real question is, if you suspect someone being trafficked, let's say I'm on a flight or I meet a friend at a hotel and I realize something is off, how do we report these suspected activities?
Yeah, so uh, definitely asking for help, calling for 911, asking tell the flight attendant, tell a main person that can actually help. Uh, I suggest not to put yourself in a dangerous situation. Safety is first. Um, Not trying to, rescue someone because you are going to be at risk as well. So asking for help, please say something. Don't be quiet. Even if you suspect something, like say something. You don't have to wait until you have like real evidence. But if you have a gut feeling, um, definitely please ask for help and call the law enforcement.
So I saw on social media some time ago, persons have these symbols. How common is that and how widely advertises these symbols so regular persons to recognize it? Because I saw it
Um,
on social media a couple times, but it's like
mhm.
these reels that people do, but I'm not seeing it advertised as, anywhere else except in these reels that people do these mini videos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not really much advertised, and then especially if someone does that, people are gonna be like, "What is that?"
Correct.
You know. So it's not really much advertised.
So we have work to do to educate the persons on that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I don't know if you could answer this, but I'm going to ask anyway. But without calling names or anything, do you have any real life cases or stories where human trafficking was uncovered because of an observant traveler or industry worker?
Yeah, there was a news that came out a couple of years, maybe a year or 2 years ago. Um, it was on a plane and it was a flight attendant. Um, that she noticed the victim. It was a woman, and her trafficker was there. She saw that was something, okay, kind of off, and she did something like she actually um, noticed and reported it. And she noticed that the girl was asking for help in other ways. And she reported it. And once they landed on that plane, the trafficker was arrested on the gate.
Oh,
So
that,
it's all about if you see the signs, if you have a gut feeling, say something, ask for help.
I know it's a touchy topic, but we know the impact human trafficking have on the victims. But how does it affect tourism in affected regions? So you mentioned the Philippines.
Hmm.
How does it affect tourism there? Because I'm not seeing, from where I am sitting, I'm not seeing that it's having a negative effect on the Philippines because people are still going there very often.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
what negative effects it will have on these regions?
The negative effect is like the trafficking is going to increase because tourists still is going on. So tourists, they're getting the money, but there's a negative side that as trafficking increases, more victims are being trafficked.
So,
Um,
like, the US put out these travel advisories on crime and kidnapping and all this, but I've never seen one for these regions that you are saying. And I am not seeing other countries because you said that in the US it's very high and in the Philippines, but I'm not seeing other countries putting out any travel advisories for the US and saying do not visit there. I'm not seeing travel advisories put out for the Philippines and saying do not travel there. So how can we get the authorities involved to do things like this?
Definitely bringing awareness, doing your research because they're not going to put it out there. Definitely do your diligence about each of the countries and state because they're not really going to talk about it.
Hmm, that's sad.
It is. It's very
Because
sad
if the
because
murder rate is high, they will put out a travel advisory, right?
mhm. And human trafficking is one of the most, it's a multi-billion dollar industry because think about it. It's more than drugs because with drugs, you can only use it one time, but
Mm-hmm.
with one person, you can use that same person multiple times, multiple in a day. So just imagine the trauma that a person goes through with that.
So what happens to a victim once they are rescued? What type of support system is in place for them?
Yeah, so there are different nonprofit organizations that do outreach to these places like Red Light District or to work with survivors. And within the state, there is a lot of nonprofit that goes and there's law enforcement that do recovery. So the nonprofit, there's advocacy services that can help them meet with the client at the hospitals and help them walk with their journey of healing and restoration to be recovered and meet and reunite with families, be able to be in a safe place, even apply for programs that are for survivors that they can get their counseling that they need. And then also to be able to go through that restoration process. So that way they don't feel alone and by themselves. So there are different resources and there's programs that they can stay up to a year or longer to help them in their recovery process.
So it's like a victim support unit.
Yes.
Okay. So what can everyday travelers do to combat human trafficking?
Yes, so definitely, like I said, if you see something, go through your by your gut feeling, ask for help, call law enforcement. Don't try to rescue the victim. Don't put yourself in a dangerous situation or unsafe. So always go with your gut feeling, as well as just learning more about it. Go through training. There's a lot of trainings out there about human trafficking that you can research on your local communities, local nonprofits that are anti-human trafficking. So I suggest to go through a training to know more about the signs, know more about what to do in those situations, and be able to be more prepared as you travel.
Is there any particular training you could pinpoint us to? Any?
Yes, yes, there's uh, a hotline number that you can even call. Let's say also if you suspect is a national human trafficking hotline. And then also Polaris is an agency online that they also provide training online. And there's also nonprofit organizations. And like I said, it all depends on where you live and where you are. So I suggest to do your research and look for human trafficking training um, nearby or that could be virtual.
And you said if you suspect something, call the authorities and do so safely.
Yes. And also there's a national human trafficking hotline that you can contact as well to report any
Can you
suspect.
share that number with us?
Yes, I surely will.
Um, so Jennifer, is there anything else you would like us to know?
Yes, it was great having this conversation because I believe this needs to be spoken more, especially more in the travel industry because that's where it's one of the common factors. So I'm just very glad that I was able to have this opportunity to speak about this, and I hope that all your listeners will be able to learn and just be curious to know more about this, so that way they can have some safety precautions and protocol on their next adventure.
I'm glad you shared all these with us and your safety tips. I am glad. Can you tell us how can our listeners contact you if they need your counseling service?
Yes, definitely. You can contact me. I have social media, Instagram, Jennifer with one N Ortiz underscore 414. You can find me on Facebook, Jennifer Ortiz. And then I will also share my links and my websites. And I believe it's going to be on the description. So that way you can contact me.
It will.
And if you're interested in my coaching services, I also provide coaching services as well to help women to break free from unhealthy toxic relationship cycles and embrace their royal identity. So I would love to connect with you.
But thank you so much, Jennifer. It was
You're
a pleasure. So, guys, this was Jennifer. I really enjoyed this conversation. I think she highlighted something that not a lot of people talk about. And if you like our conversation so far, remember to subscribe where we can give you more insightful information in the travel industries. So, thank you, guys, and see you next week in our other podcast.